And it's not for lack of respect for the office, it's because I can't do it with my leg. I can't hardly get into anything, so I'm sorry. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. If there are no additions or changes, the agenda will stand approved as written. Next item on the agenda is City Manager.
Yeah, if you're not using your mic, could you turn it off? Because we're getting kind of a feedback. All right, thanks. All right, well, it's been a really fun past couple of days. The community's been really engaged, and I think we've gotten our money's worth out of Peter Kageyama here. We've really been working him.
I got in a nap, yeah.
I ate while I sleep, did we?
Oh.
So this afternoon, me and Chris Overlease and Nancy Owsley met with Sound Transit people and several city managers from neighboring cities and their public works directors, and we had an agenda that was on the whiteboard, and it was your pretty routine agenda, you know. And towards the end of the meeting, I said, I have one more thing to add to the agenda, and in a totally different color and in a diagonal line, I wrote, "Where's the fun?" And I said, can we have fun as a stated, articulated goal in this $400 million corridor project? And you should have seen the look of surprise on these people's faces. And so anyway, they agreed, and they said, well, of course. And it was really nice to see that. But anyway, so as you all know, Peter Kageyama was here 2 years ago and really made an impact on our community and really inspired us with some great ideas and encouragement. And we went forth and made things happen. And when I say we, I shouldn't use the term we. The community did. And we just kind of got out of their way for the most part. So, and you know that there's a number of wonderful things that have happened in the last 2 years, and you're very familiar with that list of wonderful things the community has gotten together and worked on and made happen. And so Peter came back for 2.0, and you know, I think Peter should take this as a great compliment to him that we asked him to come back. And so on Monday morning, he met with Kenmore business owners, the Kenmore Business Alliance, and that was a fun conversation and got their ideas going. One idea that came out of that is, you know, the parklet that Main Street Property Group did a while back. I think it was summer of 2015. Well, the businesses said, well, what if we make that a mobile pop-up park where we host it on our own businesses for a month at a time and have it move around. So that was kind of a fun idea. Yeah. And then at noon that day, Peter and I and the mayor met with some co-creators. So some of those citizens that you know quite well who are out there co-creating and making things happen. We weren't able to get all of them because it was in the middle of the day on a Monday, and a lot of them have day jobs, but that was fun. And we sent a message to them. Number one, thank you. And number two, you have our support and we have your backs. And so I thought that was a great meeting, and Peter did a lot to inspire and encourage them.
Well, I would like to just jump in on that one thing. One of the interesting things we did talk about with that group of co-creators is about 8 of them, 10 of them?
Yeah.
Something like that. Mm-hmm. Says, okay, this is cool. We're having a conversation about what's happening in the community. We're learning from each other. So, oh, you're working on this, you're working on that. And I suggested that you guys shouldn't wait to have me come back, you know, a year or 2 years from now to do that kind of meeting again. That in a few months, you do a similar meeting. Invite those folks to come back and ask them to bring a friend. another co-creator that they know who's actually also doing some stuff. Because you guys knew who those co-creators were. They were the easily identified fish in the water, as it were. But there's a whole other layer of people that you guys probably don't know who are doing some really interesting stuff there. And so those co-creators that you're currently working with, they can become the ambassadors and the conduit to get to this next level of folks. So you do this meeting a couple more times, over the next, 8, 10, 12 months, something like that. That 8 becomes 16, that 16 becomes 32, and all of a sudden now you've got a pretty significant cohort of people who are actually out there making stuff happen and who now look at you guys as partners instead of maybe impediments or, people to avoid or how do I get around this there. So I think that would be a really interesting conversation there. And I guarantee, and you guys maybe should try to sit in on this, because I guarantee you'll learn something that's happening in the city that you didn't know about. So yeah, and a good meeting.
So Peter, you said about 3 months or so?
Yeah.
Timing? Okay.
Yeah.
So as you were saying, it's just amazing all the ideas you get when you're around you. So anyway, but the picture that came in my mind, I'm going to turn this off because it's just dark.
You should meet over there, yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. In fact, during the session that we had, Rob can tell you a little bit about the session we did today with, staff and internally, but I started to refer to the hangar as City Hall East.
Or West, yeah.
Oh, is it West?
Yeah.
Sorry, City Hall West. So I suspect that there will be an awful lot of meetings that are going to be held over there, and Rob's going to look around the office and go, where's everybody? Oh, they're over at City Hall West there. And that would be a great thing as well.
Well, while we're on that topic, I've been really encouraged to hear your thoughts about the hangar.
Oh, yeah.
Just tell the council what you're thinking as far as the hangar goes.
Awesome. Yeah. When we were here before, I remember it was a coffee shop and a parking lot and and a hope that it might actually be something interesting. Well, the reality is, and I know it's not 100% done, but the reality is it's going to be a huge win for your city. It's going to be it's a fantastic love note. In some ways, it connects two of the key, as I would say, psychic centers of your downtown. You have City Hall over here, you have the public library there, and now you have this thing that is going to literally pull it all together, that encourages people to come and just sit, enjoy a cup of coffee, talk to each other, read a book, check email, people watch. Never underestimate the simple importance of people watching. As human beings, we're endlessly fascinated with each other, just watching other people. This is now the place to go to people watch. And if you're a parent with kids, and of course you're in the summer when the splash pad is going to be operating, that's going to be awesome. And then in the winter, when it's a little chilly, we'll get the heated rocks heated. And, I think this will be, people will look at this and go, this is so cool. And then a year or so from now, when you actually add a really great sit-down restaurant adjacent to it, this will be, a real epicenter of all of the other great stuff that is happening here. So I personally can't wait to come back and visit, and there's some talk about an excuse to maybe bring me back vis-a-vis another organization. I said I'd love to come back if we do that. I would definitely want to come back and visit you guys and see what is happening here. And I actually have an idea of something I'd like to do if I get to come back there in in the hangar as well. So, yeah. Tell them your idea. Oh, sure. I'm a big board game nerd. So one of the things I did suggest to your team, Rob's team there, as we're looking through that, is one thing you should invest in a small board game library. And I happen to know that one of your team, Janet Quinn, actually moonlights a bit at Snapdoodle, and she's already talked to the Snapdoodle folks and said, oh yeah, we'll get you the games at cost or something like that to build an interesting game library. There's been a huge resurgence in the interest in board games recently in the last 5-10 years, because board games are social in a way that video games are not. I mean, I love video games. So many people actually play video games, but they don't encourage that sociality. When we sit and play a game, we sit with each other, we interact with each other, we interact with the game. And, the tables and the design of that will absolutely facilitate, that kind of interaction. Well, I mean, one of my favorite places to play board games back home is the coffee shop in my downtown. So I go and I play with friends. And so the idea that I actually had, I'd love to host a game night here. So what we would do is maybe work with Snapdoodle, and we'll get, let's say, 10 copies of one of the sort of real great, sort of family-oriented games like Ticket to Ride or Settlers of Catan or something like that. And we will host that and invite, people to come down, and we will all play Ticket to Ride. Not 50 people playing one game, but maybe 50 people playing 10 versions of Ticket to Ride at the same time. There's a way to teach all of this, and then, invite some of the actual gamers in the community to come and have an evening where we have coffee and you have wine and spirits, or wine and beer at least. There, some good food, and let people just enjoy that space. Board games. So that's a personal passion, but I think it would be actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, and we have the cabinet space to hold that kind of stuff, so it'll be neat. Hey, one thing I overlooked, what I'm doing right now is kind of going through what happened over the last 2 days, kind of recapping it. But one thing I overlooked was Monday morning, Mayor Baker gave Peter a tour of the city and drove him around and showed him things. Took him to Daddy's Donuts, which... Yes,
awesome.
That's a co-creating business that's very much engaged in the community.
Yeah.
Took him to up to St. Edward State Park, and took him to Bastille.
Swamp Creek.
Swamp Creek.
Yeah.
Yep. Saw the de facto off-leash dog park at Swamp Creek. Also took him by the planters at Simons and 84th. And your unvarnished opinion is?
They're ugly. Yes, that's okay. Ugly we can fix. I think the way to look at this is, hey, the first priority around those planters is safety. That, the design of those corners, I can see that was probably an accident just waiting to happen. People taking those way too fast. So the fact that they're ugly, in fact, sort of works in your favor in the sense like, look, you noticed them. And you're going to, hopefully you're going to start modifying your driving behavior. Now, again, we can fix ugly. And in fact, today in a couple of the meetings, one of the discussions was had of how to, sort of add to that. And I'm a big believer in the power of a coat of paint. I mean, we could just start by picking a little color palette and actually painting those things. But somebody actually very cleverly noticed that they kind of look like a train, right? So what would happen if we actually painted them like, train cars there? And maybe the front one, we'd actually have to get an actual artist to do something a little bit more involved. It makes it look like a train. But think about that. They actually look like box cars. And then the rocks that are in them that give them that solidity, well, we could just paint some of these black and paint some of these gray and paint some of it so that it looks like different sort of, ore cars or something like that. And all of a sudden now you guys look like artistic geniuses for putting in the most creative, traffic calming pylons in the state. It's like, so maybe taking that negative and turning it into a positive. But fundamentally, I think you should be proud and you should, say, hey, look, the point is we got people's attention. We're going to start modifying their behavior. You notice them. We're trying to make you safe. Now we'll work on making it look better.
Yeah, and Peter gave a quote today. He quoted Albert Einstein, who said, "A person who never makes a mistake never tried anything new."
Yeah.
And we are about safely trying new things. So anyway, some really great thoughts on that. And by the way, it was Tila Whiteman, one of our coworkers, that came up with the train idea today.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was fun. Yeah. Right now we're firming up April 24th as the night to come and talk to you about these traffic calming improvements. It's not 100%, but I'm 92% sure that's the night we're going to talk to you about the traffic calming improvements. So moving on, then I think you got a little bit of a break after the co-creators yesterday, right?
Yeah, a little downtime. That was when I went to Snapdoodle. Thank you very much. I just want to go back and mention, the Daddy's Donut things. Nice story. Lovely couple. I mean, those folks really love their city. Here's the thing. That type of entrepreneur, I call them high-touch entrepreneurs. They're not going to create 1,000 new jobs in the city. They're not going to generate the next, they're not high tech. They're not going to generate the next Google, Facebook, any of that kind of stuff. But they do create a type of business that makes your place kind of feel different and kind of feel special. And that actually should be championed and recognized there. That those folks who do those types of businesses, they do a lot to enhance the overall quality of a place. And when you have something that uniquely starts here in Kenmore, and and maybe they grow and they start to expand, value that. Because that is a good story. And they, in turn, inspire maybe other entrepreneurs who are thinking, it's like, hey, those Daddy's Donuts folks, they had a cool idea, and people really respond to that. Hey, I've got this great idea myself. And to value the high-touch entrepreneurs. We pay a lot of attention to the high-tech folks and the high-volume folks, because that's what scores points on the economic development scorecard. And, of course, we have to pay a lot of attention to that. But from a community-building standpoint, recognizing and elevating those high-touch entrepreneurs goes a long way towards creating an overall sense of entrepreneurship. So it's not just because a lot of people think that entrepreneurship just means high-tech anymore. And that's really not the case. There's artisanal stuff, things around food. Your brew industry here, the now named Brewery Row. There. That's far less about beer and far more about creativity and artisanship. The craft brew folks, it is very much, an art form. It is their creative outlet there. And that goes a long way towards nurturing this sort of this artisanal, this craft sort of mentality in your overall city. So I think those types of businesses, they may not score as well on the traditional economic development scorecard, but they absolutely do matter. And I'm sure you guys understand that. But sometimes it's nice to hear from the outside voice. It says, oh, yeah, that is pretty cool. I'm glad we have that. And they're really good donuts. So, yeah.
All right. Yeah, thank you for that. So anyway, then we had the big event last night, 6 o'clock. And Peter gave a little bit different presentation than he did 2 years ago. I probably spent a little too much time with my PowerPoint, stealing time from Peter, but I thought it was important to...
No, I thought that was great what you did, that you showcased you reflected back to the community all the things that actually they had done.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people who were in the audience there from 2 years before, and maybe they didn't remember that, hey, yeah, that was because we did this. Yeah. So I think that was absolutely time very well spent.
Good, yeah. I felt like I went a little long, but it was fun to remind everybody about all the great things they had accomplished. And then, Peter, most of you were there. 5 or 6 of you, I think, were there. So I got lots of ideas that came out of that meeting. The folks at the tables wrote ideas. But Peter, do you want to give a quick recap of last night?
Sure. The main thing I talked about that was maybe different than the last time I was here is knowing that this was, as Rob asks us, hey, could you do Love 2.0? And I said, yeah, I can do Love 2.0. And the whole idea behind this was to maybe take the conversation that we had to another level. And so I started to approach this on the idea, I started actually thinking about neighborhoods. And after a conversation, we realized maybe that wasn't the best defining sort of characteristic around that. But we did decide that what we were going to do is try to get folks here in the community to identify the things that they felt were uniquely Kenmore or made Kenmore special. As I've started to call these the psychic centers of places, right? Downtown, broadly writ, is a psychic center of every place because downtown is everybody's neighborhood. City Hall is oftentimes a psychic center of a place. Certain parks. Sometimes they're people. Sometimes they're restaurants. It might be an event that becomes a defining psychic center of a place. So what we did is started with this notion of having them to identify those because by identifying those, they are saying the things that they think are uniquely them, that are uniquely Kenmore. And that was very, I think, it was reinforcing for folks to hear the other folks found the same things important to them. Says, yeah, that is us. This is pretty cool. And then asking them, how do we simply make these important things, these tent poles, if you will, of your community identity, how do we make them better? And that's a simple question. And then we framed it in a way that we thought was appropriate to more citizen engagement. We didn't just say, hey, how do we make the park better? That could be a really big, really expensive sort of proposition. I'm sure they'd come up with good ideas, but we tried to pull it down to a level where we thought that they would still consider themselves the major actors in that at $500 or $5,000 there. And I thought they came up with some really interesting stuff that was kind of fun and focused. The last time we did this, we allowed them to pick anything they wanted to do. There. But what was actually, to me, interesting about that is, in retrospect, when they picked the winning project from 2 years ago, they actually picked one of the psychic centers of your city, which is the cement silos. And you think, why is that a psychic center of our city? Well, it is because it is strongly identified with your identity. The fact that everybody, as they drive into town or out of town, they see those cement silos and they say, I'm in Kenmore. That is a psychic center. Now, it may not be the prettiest one, and you may not be happy about that in some ways, but you cannot deny that that is part of, your, it's an identifying feature, as it were. So they said they wanted to make it better. They wanted to make it prettier, and that is the beautify, let's beautify this. So they actually had keyed on to a psychic center, unbeknownst to them and even to me at the time there. So now they've identified these things, and now this is the stuff that they want to sort of move forward with and to try to improve. So I thought that was very interesting, and they came up with some really good stuff.
Yeah, and I wrote down a few of the notes, not all of them. We were able to capture them on flip chart paper, and we'll definitely list them all out. But just some examples that came out of last night. My table, and came up with one where, we identified Lake Point as a psychic center. And, most people can't see Lake Point. It's hidden. In fact, a lot of folks, when they think of Lake Point, they think of the cement plant. They think that's Lake Point. And so you actually really have to either look at it from a satellite photo, or you have to actually go on site. And Councilmember Smith was at my table, and can I give you credit for this idea? The idea was to have just a wonderful concert out on that point in the current state that the property is in now. And perhaps the property owner / developer would be supportive of that, just to get that kind of community support and helping the community visualize what could actually go there. And maybe, and adding to that idea, maybe they have some conceptual plans there on site when people are coming to the concert. So
that's important. I think, as you said, most people, they know Lake Point by the name, by the coverage, or they might have seen a map and they're saying, oh, yeah, it's over there. To actually walk out onto it, to give them that opportunity, that plants a seed. Because now they'll stand there and they go, yeah, I could see this being something really cool.
Yeah.
Because right now it's just sort of a drawing, a concept for them. Do you make it real by letting them maybe walk out actually on there, even for an evening? I think that'd be a great way to start.
So go ahead. What's your idea? Do you want to go?
No, I just wanted, the only, what you don't know is that, and I can say this now because it's long past, but before I was on the council, I went onto the property with some friends late at night when we probably shouldn't have. And
we didn't have Brewery Row back then.
We didn't, right. And this was not too many years before I was on the council, so old enough to know better, but I wanted to see it, and I wanted to show some friends, and we went out there, and it was so incredible. And two of the guys that went with me grew up in this area and had never been on that property before. And so the whole point of what I'm getting at is if you get people out there, I think it would help build support for just whatever we want to do out there.
I was going to say, because I don't know if they were at your table, but the gentleman I was speaking to last night about this, and he said how right now it just feels like you shouldn't go there. You don't touch that, don't go there. and by getting these opportunities for temporary, a concert or whatever, then you would be able to go there. And so we coined a new term. It's called breaking the sand barrier.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So I have a date that I want to have this concert.
I mean, it's almost too bad that we can't open up part of the property for Saturday for the hydros. Because there'd be theoretically some great seating areas kind of facing the river and facing out to the lake out there.
Oh, yeah.
But it's probably not quite safe yet.
That is a great idea.
Ooh, that's very cool.
Oh, right.
Like a special party that maybe the developer could host and invite, folks. Great primary seating. Oh, that's a winner. That's a winner.
All right. Well, and feel free to, you were all here, so feel free to jump in with ideas that you gleaned from last night. Another one I liked was calling the brewery district Brewery Row and then putting an arch sign over the Burt Gilman Trail as you're entering Brewery Row. I thought that was a sweet idea.
Can I ask you a question on that, Rob?
Yeah.
Does the bridge that goes over the trail at 73rd, does the county have jurisdiction over the bridge itself in any way because it's over the trail, or is that strictly a city-owned?
I don't know.
The reason I say that is because that just happens to be right in the middle of two of the three. You have two breweries on one side and one on the other. And if you identified something as you're going underneath the trail there on the bridge, as long as the county doesn't have a problem with it, I thought that would be a perfect way to create an identity for that area because it's right there.
That would be cool. Thank
you. So that was another idea, was to do murals in the tunnels on the Burt Gilman Trail. And it's been done in Bothell, and that was King County jurisdiction, so I'm sure we could work something out with the county to facilitate that. Also, the Macy's Day Parade, Macy's Day Thanksgiving Parade, they got the big balloons over the, those like Big Bird or whoever. Well, somebody was saying, make a Hank Aaron balloon, a large Hank Aaron, and then whenever you want to promote an event or something, you put Hank over that, and businesses could borrow him, and then you can say, oh, what's going on over there? Because there's Hank.
Yeah.
So
maybe it doesn't have to be like that full-blown Charlie Brown size that we're talking about, but something that's 8-10 feet across, that fill it up with helium, that you put them at a party, you put them we're talking about a farmer's market that's happening vis-a-vis one of your churches up here. But yeah, these Hank sightings. I mean, you're going to be your mascot. Get him out there. I think we also talked about a costume was discussed.
Yeah, Hank Aaron mascot costume. You could have somebody going out picking up litter in a Hank Aaron mascot costume.
That could become the new Public Works uniform, actually. So,
well, no, I think that's a good reason why the mayor needs to really get back into walking shape.
Yeah, there you go.
Get in that outfit.
I'm very happy to do it.
Yeah. You got that.
Oh, what else? Anybody jump in here? I'm just looking at some of the ideas that came out of last night. Somebody talked about a Hank Aaron interpretive area in the Rookery. Somebody brought the idea of a graffiti wall, which has obviously been done in other cities. A storytelling path at St. Edward State Park, Frisbee golf.
A temporary potential dog park in Rhododendron Park. I think they said that.
Yeah. And your idea for a dog park, Peter?
I think the best idea for a dog park, frankly, is right out here. I'm totally serious. In front of City Hall.
Why it was hard for me?
Why is that?
City Hall goes to the dogs. I mean, come on. It's like, maybe
people
it's a good
love
thing.
dogs.
Well,
so yeah.
It wouldn't be that hard to do. You just roll out some of that special AstroTurf and put a little fence around.
And I think and I talk about the importance of temporary. Allow people to get used to an idea, right? So this summer is going to be chock full of really good stuff for you guys. So you're getting ready to open up the hangar there and get people to come down. So you're inviting, parents with kids. What about the people with dogs? Especially, all of these new folks who are moving into these apartments here, and they're by their default using the green space around the skate park. Right now, that's fine. I don't know how the skate kids feel about all of that, but we'll all share. But a small, temporary, off-leash, enclosed dog park out here this summer, it might plant a seed of an idea, because it'd be far easier to do it here and to take the joke. Okay, City Hall going to the dogs there. But when we start proposing it in some of the other parks, there's going to be some pushback and some opposition. Oh, it breeds this, it's that. So well, wait a minute. We did this in right downtown in City Hall, and people really responded to it. So this would be the least contentious place to put it on a temporary basis to show folks the value of that, because again, there's dog parks are social. People will come together. They will talk to each other. Well, again, this would be closed off over here, and I'm not suggesting. I think you want people to primarily eat and stay on that side, but when they come over here, they can hang out. Deputy Mayor, yes.
Yeah, we had talked about an off-leash dog.
Mayor Baker, did we see Twin Park? Did we see that park? Yeah, that's that new Bright Park that we couldn't get back up. Oh, yes. Yeah, and that's the one that's connected over the hill is was it Bothell? Yeah. I think some combination of frisbee golf in that and an off-leash dog park. Yeah. 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 It's certainly an excuse, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think the analogy is good, that the front yard of City Hall and the backyard of the hangar. So yeah, start thinking about that. How do we make the front yard, more accommodating? There where people want to sit on their porch and stay, on the front yard. It's where people congregate. It's where the kids play. It's where dogs, play. So I think, yeah, I bet that's spectacular. But that's one season out of the year, one night out of the year. Yeah. The dogs do like. Well, that's the thing. You've actually already sort of created a feature specifically for the dogs. That fountain there is really cool. Yeah. The dog. You'll find a way to do that. I think that activating the front yard of City Hall should be one of the next sort of short-term steps. And again, it doesn't have to involve a whole lot of money. But let's get a little creative about that and play off of the advantage of this of the hangar, which is again going to bring a whole host of people, I think, downtown.
I have a comment on that. Because I think that makes sense to clearly tie them together. But I think it would be one neat part of that is maybe we could have, and I don't know what it would look like artistically, but an extraordinarily cool side or a crosswalk just between those two buildings. Because right now it is just a crosswalk, but maybe there's a way to make the connection more extraordinary in some way.
Who owns this road here that's between you and the hangar? Oh, well, that's good. Well, that's much easier to do. Pick a Saturday morning and you block it off for 6 hours. I showed a video today to some folks. We did a sidewalk, an intersection painting in St. Petersburg as part of the Shine Mural Arts Festival. And it's, it's a design. You invite people to actually come down and participate, but you make it really, interesting and participatory. And they did like the entire intersection. You're just talking about doing a couple really cool crosswalks, which could be done in a matter of a few hours. We're not even talking about a major, traffic disruption. And again, you do it on a Saturday morning, Sunday morning, something like that, when people aren't trying to quickly get to work. Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So update on that. Stacy Admin is going to give us a couple of ideas for that intersection and also 67th, 181st. She's just looking at designing a dahlia flower right in the middle of this intersection.
Oh, wow. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, and then the other intersection at 67th, 181st. She's coming up with some other design. Camera? Yeah, Kenmore camera. But I need to follow up with her and see where she's at on that. But she's gonna sometime soon gonna come and present some ideas to you on what. Oh, she's waiting on me? Oh, okay. Now, if we do that, will you get some flack for that? Yes, you will. But, it's a waste of tax dollars. It's going to fade. There's naysayers who will come up with all sorts of reasons why how dumb it is. But I think what Peter said is when you have an intersection like that, when you do something like that, you're sending a message that this is somehow better than average. I quoted Peter on that. Yeah. And I think it's also, we want a walkable downtown, and I think it's important to also send a message that you're entering a different realm when you're in this one block area.
Right. That it's not just about the car.
Yeah.
Because this can feel, there's a lot of traffic out here. This can feel very overwhelming to pedestrians. So, I think you justify this to folks, the naysayers say, look, we're trying to make a point that it's not just about the car. We want to do something that is better than average. We want to raise the stakes. And at its heart, there's all kinds of information that shows that when you do it, when intersections and crosswalks and things like that don't look quite normal, cars naturally slow down. There actually is a safety element that goes, with this.
But there's a lot of motorists that don't want to be slowed down, what I'm learning. And
well, yeah.
Slowing them down 2 seconds of their life, they blow a circuit.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's actually a group out of Portland that's been doing this, painting these intersections for years now, and they've actually become an official part of the city of Portland, and I'm trying to recall the name of that, and I will research that and get that back to you, but they might have some data that would support the value of why you would actually paint an intersection or a crosswalk to give you guys that sort of cover when people say, well, you're spending money to do this. Why are we doing that? It's like, well, we have to paint these intersections every, so many years anyways. They always fade, of course, but we're just going to make them better. And by making them better and more interesting, more artistic, we're actually going to serve a number of other purposes. I will find that information out for you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I believe you absolutely could. We say that kind of jokingly, but there is a lot of truth to that there. Did you know, statistically, a spiral staircase is safer than a regular staircase? It's like, why? Well, because it's not normal. And when people have to walk on a spiral staircase, they actually pay more attention to when they're walking. When we're walking on a regular staircase, and if it happens to be off by 1 millimeter, there's a pretty good chance we're going to trip. So, some engineer gets a calculation just a hair wrong on one of those steps, and boom, we have, Mayor Baker falling again. So, yes, so sometimes the extra expense of doing something a little bit different makes things safer. And I know it seems kind of odd, but there's all kinds of information that supports that.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It is more dangerous than if you had no crosswalk at all, because pedestrians feel protected and safe. Motorists aren't seen as safe.
Yeah.
But you put a big flasher up there.
Yeah.
And it's something different. It's something to see.
Yeah.
I think that's what the research shows. The other thought occurred to me when you're talking about the disaster painted on there. I think that in Seattle, the traffic circles, small traffic circles, they have at the intersection slow people down. What if instead of a flat one, you actually made a three-dimensional
Be like made out of concrete or something, or?
You know, there is techniques that you can use when you paint it, so it has a three-dimensional look. So it looks like there's depth to it. Yeah.
I know, yes. I know exactly what you're talking about. And can you imagine the first time some out-of-towner coming through the intersection not knowing, saying, oh, it's like, oh my God, and there's an accident. So, well, it's an interesting idea, and I think, it might actually, talk to the artist. That could be kind of cool. But, I think don't settle for something that is just sort of standard and ordinary. You don't want to be a standard and ordinary city. You're trying to do stuff that is better, above and beyond. And sometimes that pushes at the edges of what people think is, financially prudent there. But as I said before, yes, things have a cost, but things also have a value. And we should be focusing on the value of things as opposed to the nickels and dimes that folks seem to want to count ad nauseum with you guys. Let's talk about value.
Yeah, and Peter brought up the big blue bear in is it Denver, Colorado?
Yeah.
Yeah, and how when that proposal first came up, perhaps the policymakers thought, wow, we could fill a lot of potholes with the money that big blue bear is going to cost. But Peter talks about how things also have a value beyond the purely financial. And it's technically true that we could use that money that was spent on the bear to fix more potholes. That's technically true. But Peter makes the point, what is the cost of boring? What is the cost of ugly? And do we really want to design our city to what Peter calls battleship gray?
Minimum standards, yes. Minimum acceptable standards. No. Yeah, boring has a cost. Ugly has a cost. Now that I could get behind. Yes. Yeah.
Now is the time where you should show them that video.
Yes, I have a kind of an amusing video about how some people got creative about fixing potholes, and no, this one's is actually from England, but it is pretty funny.
It's not rated G though. So.
No, it was not. We decided not to show it last night. So, and there was a couple kids there, at least part of it yesterday evening. So, I should have actually showed it to your team today. I forgot to do that. We were kind of rushing through at the end there because we're going to get people out on time. But yeah.
So, just another quote that I wrote down: cities have to be able to grow, change, and evolve. Otherwise, they are dead. And I think that's true for us. So,
yeah, the folks who want to sort of preserve everything, and I get the historic preservation. That is a totally different thing. I think there are people who seem to want to sort of close the door and say no more change, and they want to preserve things in amber. But you preserve dead things in amber. Cities cannot, be preserved in amber. They have to be allowed to grow and change and evolve. And we can discuss how we'd like to see that change manifest. But I think it's, you're trying to hold back, the tide, with your hands if you think you're going to stop change from happening. You might temporarily derail it. You might temporarily slow some stuff down. You can, request your environmental impact studies, your this, your that, your injunctions, and sooner or later, stuff's going to change. It is inevitable. So I guess the question becomes, be part of the change there to shape it into a way that you find acceptable. And frankly, a lot of people who will fight against stuff there, once they get to it and they experience it, they go, oh yeah, this is really cool. And all those naysayers, like, remember when we did this and you were against it? It's like, I don't remember that. It's people's selective memory.
North Shore Summit Park.
Really? Yeah. So yeah, that will happen. So, that's why we continue to fight the fight.
Yeah, just to dovetail on that, when I was a political science major, JFK, when he was elected on a plurality vote. He didn't even get a majority. But when you surveyed people years later, after he had died, and asked them if they voted for him, 75% said, yeah, I voted for him.
Yeah.
So same type of thing. But Okay, any other thoughts from last night? We've got a lot of follow-up items. I already have a citizen emailing me. He was at my table, Tim something. Stellard, yeah. Yeah, well, he's identified a small piece of city property on Simons, and it's all has blackberries and stuff, and so he wants to put a poster on the tree on that piece of property saying city clean up this, whenever, and he wants to have everybody in the community to come and clear out the blackberries, and he wants to plant a garden there. So he's already emailed me his plans and showing me where the property is, and so that's somebody who attended last night. So. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a woman who was a school teacher last night. Her idea, she wanted to do like a story trail there. So you have somehow like the beginning of a story, a page could be a mural, something like that, and then you go 100 yards, and then there's the next page, and so you encourage the kids to, yeah. These little things, like how do we, the term I use is surprise and delight. How do you surprise and delight people while they're walking down the trail? You give them something a little bit different, a little bit of color, a story. Maybe it's sound. We tend to get kind of one-dimensional in our thinking about this, but are there some trees? And it was actually something I wrote about from Greenville, South Carolina. They had the idea of, well, let's add some sound to this. So maybe on the trail, we go to Home Depot and we buy some of those wind chimes, like kind of the big ones, and we hang them in one of the trees. So as people are walking there, and like, this is the area where there's always, where are those chimes coming from? I don't know. But something like that just makes it a little bit different. And when I get to this area, it's like, you listen, oh yeah, there are the chimes. I don't know. We have to put it in an area where the neighbors aren't going to complain about something like that. But I suspect we can probably find a few places like that. So let's try to appeal to multiple sort of senses, there as well.
Was one of the psychic centers was the bridge. The
I heard
bridge
that a lot.
over the slough. Yeah, and I was really surprised by that. I'm just going to have to turn this off.
Yes. Yeah. The bridge dinner. Yeah, I showed that example a couple of years ago. Yeah. I don't know.
Why do they have to tear down the old bridge?
Interesting question.
Well, that's where the new bridge is going. I don't know.
I thought the new bridge was going to the side, and so you have the 2 lanes there, and you're going to build another bridge that sort of goes around this way, and that stretch in the middle.
There'll be a small gap, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to say, in St. Petersburg, actually, we had that situation where a group of citizens, this was about 15, 20 years ago, they actually saved an old bridge that had been replaced, but they were able to save it from demolition, and they turned it into a walking trail and bikes and fishing. And there was that for about 15 years, but the central underpinnings were actually starting to decay, and they had actually got to the point where this is now technically really unsafe. So they did eventually close it, but they managed to save it, and they did turn it into essentially a linear park for a decade or so. Yeah, it could be done, but if the design does not allow for it, yeah. Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the High Line in New York, which is the
High Line, yes.
prime example of that. And I showed you guys some pictures of that a few weeks ago. So, all right. Any other thoughts? Yes.
A question, or a comment maybe more, with regards to a temporary dog park. Mm-hmm. And if we do a temporary dog park, whether it was out here or someplace else, I would say it would be critical for us to have a plan for a long-term. Because once we start something like that, I don't think we'd ever want to take one away without having a replacement. So that's just
a really good point.
Something that I think we would create an expectation that we should not come back from if we start a dog park.
Probably true. I mean, you know, you might announce it from the beginning. Say, hey, look, we're going to try this on a seasonal basis for the first year or so. We're going to do it here in the summer. We might move to another park in the fall and try in a couple different places and see what the feedback is. I think if you tell folks up front that it's going to be seasonal, yeah, I think they will miss it, and they'll go, oh, we'd love it. Can't you keep it? It's like, well, hey, we're working on that. We're working towards it. Yeah, if you announce it up front and manage the expectation a little bit, it helps. But yeah, I think once people have it and they experience it, go, this is great. It's like, we really should keep this. Yeah, they do. Yeah. But it also is, you know, because it is sort of an unregulated or unmanaged sort of dog park, there could be, you know, some issues. I mean, they sort of police it internally. But what you'd like to do is have the folks who, you have hundreds of people now living right here next to City Hall in these new apartments, right? What you'd like is to give them a place to come out of their apartments and meet each other. Now, granted, the hangar is going to be one of those things, the restaurants, the shops, and things like that are happening here. But the dog park, again, downtown, is a great way for these newcomers. And many times, a lot of these folks who are moving here, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of them are relatively new to the community, right? Well, this is a great way to build some of that social capital and connect them to each other and to Kenmore. Yeah. Yeah. If you could work with the developer to say, hey, yeah, I think a smart developer would say, yeah, of course we'll do that. It does? Oh yeah. Oh.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes, sir. It was the pier, actually. Yes. The bridge, yeah. Yeah, it was the municipal pier. Much contention, much haranguing. This was an exercise in how not to get something done there. So we had this aging municipal pier, which is essentially like this quarter-mile, you know, linear pier. At the far end was this crazy inverted pyramid, 5 stories high, restaurants, kitschy shops. It was a kind of a touristy thing that, frankly, tourists would spend about an hour in at most. And if you were a local, you just did not go to the pier. So the pier was falling down. The underpinnings had to be fixed. And so the cost to just repair it was astronomical. So folks said, you know, it'd be much better to just tear it down and rebuild it. So they said, okay, what do we want to do? So they went through a long sort of planning process. They did lots of community input, lots of meetings. They selected a handful of firms. They pitched the idea. There were 3 that were ultimately selected. There was a small group of council and some outside folks were created as this committee, and that committee made a decision. And this first iteration was kind of cool. It was this elliptical. It was actually sort of like a what's that term? Yeah, imagine a ribbon sort of crossed there, and they called it the lens. It's like, okay, that's cool. Well, of course, at this point, people started saying, well, wait a minute, I don't like that design. And they got enough votes there, and the mayor at the time was a little, it's like, well, if the people want to vote on this, I guess we should let the people vote on it. And rather than committing, says, wait, because the city had a contract with these folks. And there were several $1 million already into it, and they basically had to pull the contract back. They essentially allowed a vote on public art. It's like, I don't like that. Well, what do you like? I don't know, but I don't like that. So you're voting on taste there. So the new mayor actually comes in. They go through this whole process again, spending millions of dollars. They go through. They eventually select down to a few. There's public input. One is chosen, and it is now. They've torn everything down, and they are actually starting the build, which will complete next year. So if you come and visit St. Petersburg next year, you'll actually see the new pier, which is actually very simple. It's a linear park. We're building it. We're going to create more green space out on our water, a small restaurant at the end, performance venue, outdoor performance venue as well there. So that, in many ways, it's a very simple, elegant, might be a good way to describe it. But it was absolutely an exercise in how not to get something done and to waste several $1 million in several years. I wrote about it in the second book. I called it a self-inflicted wound for our city. So yeah, if you can avoid those self-inflicted wounds, you're doing good there. That is not to say that you're not going to make mistakes, and mistakes happen. Be okay with that. Own them. Learn from them. Yeah.
I had a question on our cell phone tower right out here. Any thoughts on whether it's redeemable or? I said last time the cell phone tower to me looks like Doctor Who's what is his tool called, the sonic screwdriver.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it looks like a sonic screwdriver. You could maybe do something fun with that. But you had mentioned the idea that because it's this odd-shaped lot, that there's not a whole lot that you can do with it. It would take a very creative developer to maybe do something with that. And maybe one of the short-term things is you might figure out how could you do something maybe with some shipping containers to create a small little pop-up boutique kind of things. The tiny footprints there to allow probably fit half a dozen or more of those in there. Last night I showed Restart Mall from Christchurch, New Zealand, which was this amazing shopping area. It is still a shopping area in downtown Christchurch that is made from these shipping containers. They're not very big, and they sort of invite local or regional entrepreneurs to do something kind of fun there. Another one that you might also consider, I wrote about this from Pensacola, Florida. They had this very odd-shaped lot on one of the key intersections in their downtown, and it would have, again, taken a really creative developer to figure out something to do in there. Well, what the city decided to do was to, on a temporary basis, although it's been several years now, they leveled the lot, they put in electrical, water, and seating, and then they created the space for like 4 Airstream trailers to be sort of permanent food trucks there. So they created an outdoor dining area with 4 different micro restaurants, and they call it Alfresco there. And it's been wildly successful there. And if they ever got a developer who really wanted that land, it's not that hard to move some food trucks, and the actual investment is nominal compared to a standing building, as it were. So, you can think of long-term temporary kinds of uses. It's like, hey, let's spur some action. And if we get the right developer, great. But in the meantime, what could we do? Shipping containers, some semi-permanent food trucks, something along those lines that helps to activate that space. Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm all for the surprise and delight kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm just looking at my notes from yesterday at the KBA meeting. There's just a few more ideas that I thought were fun. In downtown St. Petersburg, there's First Friday, where they bring in a band and a beer truck. Band and a beer truck, and
can be that simple. You need to get people into the habit of coming, downtown and staying beyond, the 9 to 5 or the typical hours. And that was what St. Petersburg tried to accomplish 15 plus years ago. And it really worked. And the name actually mattered. It was First Friday. So you just knew, the First Friday, there's going to be a party downtown. Let's stick around for a couple hours, have a beer, maybe go grab something to eat. Simple. You don't have to overthink, the necessity of how to have some fun with that.
Yeah, and as far as activating the outdoor space or indoor space at the town square, is there a mime troupe that we could ask to come and practice Or is there a unicycle group who needs some space to practice?
A yoga class who wants to get out of their studio.
Sure,
You know, a dance troupe that wants, is there a belly dance group that wants to, rehearse, there? Belly dancer over here? Yeah,
Used
all
to be.
right.
Former.
Used to be, all right. So, but to invite folks, say, hey, bring what you do to our, the backyard here, because we think that's important. And I bet all of you know some groups. It's like, they're not going to do it, all the time, but, once a year, a couple times a year, we'll come down and rehearse over here. We'll practice. We'll do this. Just to get people, it's like there's always something interesting happening, at the hangar in the town center. So
one other idea was having Bow Wow Funtown come and do dog training at the town square. And the owner of Bow Wow Funtown was there, and she was like, "Yeah, I could do that." So, yeah. Or then just moving on to today. It's all just a blur now. Mayor Baker also, actually, you weren't able to make it. Yeah, Nancy Owsley took Peter up to meet with Dr. Powell at Bastyr University. They had a good meeting.
And I'd actually met the previous president just shortly before he was actually retiring. It was nice to go up and see what was happening there. What a great asset for you guys. We talked about the relationship between, school and town and gown, as it were, and all very good. Yeah. Yeah,
and then at 10:30 we had an all-staff meeting where Peter gave his a wonderful presentation, had lots of really inspirational things in it. And we also invited some key consultants, people who are going to be working on major projects, and really encouraging them to build fun and surprise and delight into these projects, and having fun be a stated goal of all of our projects. And what was really fun is there were a couple of consultants who are working on Juanita Drive that were at the same table with some other coworkers. And after the whole thing was over, and we ended at 12:30, they were still going, and they had the flip chart paper on the table, and they were getting really creative. They had all these color-coded things for Juanita Drive and all these really neat ideas for a otherwise boring sidewalk project. So, also another idea that came out of today was if we ever have funding for 61st Avenue sidewalks, those upheaving sidewalks because of the big tree roots. Well, the idea is to make it walkable again, but also save the trees if you can. And so an idea was brought up to do these bridges over the root balls. So have a normal sidewalk, and then when you get to the root ball, do a bridge. But the bridge can be, or a boardwalk if you want to call it that. But the bridge can be interesting. It can have one sort of a theme at one tree, and then you get to the next tree, and it could be a different themed bridge. And
I think even just the boardwalk over those tree roots would be interesting.
Yeah.
And then to make it even more interesting and better. Yeah.
With some sort of a theme or something to go with it. So
it was nice that they weren't thinking just about the pure efficiency. It's like, they were saying, wait, there are other things to consider in all of this. So that was good.
Yeah, and as you know, for this year you have funding to do survey work and alternative analysis for that stretch of road. And the consultant was out there just this morning checking out the trees, and he actually has them all numbered now. He's got little brass round numbers on each one of them. And Peter said, well, why don't you give them names?
We said that could be a little dangerous in case we have to tear Freddie down. So, we don't have that happen. So, but I get that. So.
But they decided in one city that where each tree has an email address, and so.
Yeah, I shared in Melbourne, Australia. They gave the email addresses for very practical purposes to report damage or trees that need help. But people started to email the trees, and then the Parks Department started to respond on behalf of the trees as well. So it was this really fun and interesting sort of opportunity there. Yeah.
So lots more ideas came out of today, and Melody Yannick is going to write all those ideas down, and we'll get them to you. So.
And then the faith-based community. That was cool. About 8, 9 leaders from the different churches. And the thing is, the faith-based community is a really interesting conduit for citizen engagement. You know, if you're a concerned citizen, somebody who wants to go and get involved and do something, a lot of times the first place you're going to go is your church. Because you don't know how to connect. It's like, well, what project should I work on? And in some ways, the church is that funnel for you guys of volunteers and for maybe the next group of co-creators. Because in some ways, the church vets a project. Because it's like, well, should I get involved with this group or this group or this group? I don't know what's real, what's legit, or what's maybe a good project. The church essentially sort of does that vetting process for you, and it channels that energy. And those folks who have that energy and they get that bug to actually do something. I said to the leaders there, hey, you might have a few people that rise to the top of your sort of volunteers, your doers. These folks could then become the kind of folks who actually then maybe want to do something even bigger. And we would encourage you to, send them our way or to connect them or us to them. And we're going to find a way to maybe help, nurture more of these co-creators. I don't want to call them silos, but they are sort of sometimes inside of these other communities that don't necessarily face us outward there. And sometimes that talent, it's like, it could be bigger. If given, the space and the opportunity to do something. And so that was, I think, a pretty productive conversation. And there seemed to be a lot of deal-making that was going on with these folks. Oh, yeah, I'm doing this, you're doing this. So I think if nothing else, they got together, and so they're going to be collaborating more.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I think Anya Hellman actually said, hey, can we get together more often as a Kenmore faith-based group? And so I think they might.
Yeah.
The North Shore Church here on 68th Avenue, they're going to be doing that farmers market, and it sounds like it's really going to take off. They've got all these vendors signed up and everything, and he said that he was a little nervous because years ago he'd had tried it with another city, unnamed city nearby, and he had a bad experience and was kind of scared off. And so when he came to the permit counter this time, and he said he was welcomed with open arms, and we said, "Oh, thank you," and and so I'm hearing this from him. I didn't hear this from my coworkers, and so he says we were just super easy to work with and just made it really pleasant experience for him on getting the permits needed for that.
You love hearing that.
Yeah, and I really do, because when somebody comes to us at the permit counter with a crazy idea like pillow fights in the park, rather than saying no or that's too risky, rather than saying just no, because that's the lazy answer, say, well, I can see you're trying to get from point A to point B. We here at the city want to help you get from point A to point B. You may not be able to go this route, but we could probably find another creative route for you to get to what you want to accomplish. And so that is the culture that I'm seeing here at the city and at the permit counter.
And as I said, that's a culture that starts from the top down. It starts from you guys and from Rob, giving people the space to say yes to something. Folks, who are in these offices, they're not afraid to say no to something. They're afraid they might say yes to the wrong thing. So giving them the support and the culture of saying, hey, look, let's be. I don't want you to just reflexively say no. Having that leadership from both sides of this, that's very good.
We have a tremendous issue, tremendous faith-based community here in the city. We're very, very fortunate to have.
Mm-hmm.
As you and I talked about on Monday, I don't know who else does this, but I thoroughly enjoy going out and just talking to the church. Sitting in the back, they don't know I'm there, and it's truly amazing what we have in this community, and we are so lucky. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, my pleasure.
So that's the recap. There's lots of follow-up to do, but I just my expectations were exceeded once again, and I just had a really great time over these past couple days. So thank you, Peter. I also want to publicly thank Janet Quinn. She did a great job hosting Peter at her home and picking him up at the airport and driving him around.
Yes.
So yeah. Peter really does a great job keeping his costs down for us by finding free housing and not renting a car and and things like that. So thank you very much, Peter. Appreciate
You're
it.
very welcome. So, I would have even used an Uber driver for tomorrow morning, but he's apparently sidelined. But no, yeah. No, Janet has agreed to, she's also going to take me to the airport tomorrow. So, yeah, I appreciate that. And I'd love to come back. We're talking about an opportunity maybe with the Sound City organization. They're doing an annual event at the end of the year, and they're interested maybe in having me come back and speak. If we do that, I'd love to come back and see what you guys are doing. I would love to host the game night there if we do that. So yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, also big thanks to Leslie Harris and Nancy Meehan and Melody Yannick, and who am I missing? Everybody here. Debbie was here late last night. Been a ton of work in the background, and they've all worked super hard to pull this off. So thank you very much,
Yes,
Leslie, and
thank
your
you.
team.
You're very welcome. Yeah, I will tell your story forward. You guys have done some amazing things. People ask me, says, "Look, got any examples of when you've done something in a city?" And they says, "Yes, I do." So yes, thank you for being an exemplary city as well. Yeah. 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 We could also teach a minor bird to swear. That could be interesting too. So, because that would be that would probably be where folks would take it today. So.
Staff report. 2 items. We're going to have rigs drilling in the right-of-way. Let's see, the 6th and the 7th, Thursday, Friday of this week on Juanita Drive. This is all for preliminary design work for walkways and waterways. And so they're going to be testing the soil and the pavement condition with those rigs, and we're going to put out a notice tomorrow on that. So in case you were wondering what's going on, you'll know what that deal is. And then also on Friday, it's likely Friday, the planters at 84th are going to be thinned out and moved back at the curve. So it'll make it a little more comfortable for drivers making that turn. Yeah.
Is the paint going to, the roadway striping going to be changed too, or is it just the planters moving back and that's it?
The roadway striping is not changing. It's just the planters. However, we have ordered some piano key crosswalks to help delineate that pedestrian crossing even further. When I say piano key, I just mean the white bars. Yeah.
Yeah, you've seen those, yes.
Yeah.
I have nothing to add, except I'd like to thank Peter for coming, and it was a pleasure to have you here again. Thanks.
They're out doing some interesting stuff. So.
Sam, I'd like to thank you. You've had a great impact on our city, and I'm glad we're good students. And we're actually listening to what you have to say, because it's like consultants sometimes come and give reports, and they sit on binders up on shelves. And we don't like to do that in our city. Thank you.
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you. It's always fun to have you.
Thank you again. But I'm thinking that we don't need to wait 2 years.
No, we won't.
Get ideas. Well, for you to come back, yes, but we don't need go 2 years to have a public meeting.
Absolutely not.
Gathering to generate new ideas. And we've got the facility right across the street to do that. And one thing I've had in the back of my mind is we move the Coffee with Council there, and you could expand the Coffee with Council to a longer meeting, maybe a report of what's going on in the city, and an opportunity for people to come up with ideas and share with the group of 10.
You remember Million Cups of Coffee? Yeah. I haven't forgotten about that.
Yeah. No. Do that once or twice a month, a gathering place. You want to find out what's going on in town, here's where you go and when you go.
City Hall West.
So, I just got a couple of things. SCA, as you heard tonight, wants Peter to be a speaker in November, December. It'll be the last Wednesday in November or the first Wednesday in December. So, we will working with him on that, and we really hope we can make that happen. We got an email today, which is going to affect us down the road, but it's still being worked out. We'll have to do what the cities are going to be responsible for taking over. There was a letter from King County Sheriff's Office to your colleague over in Shoreline saying the average cost per officer is going to be about $3,500. Which is going to be a hit to us. It's no more hit, but it's just something.
So if you multiply that times our 14 officers, that's about $50,000 a year. Now, but I think it also would be we pay a proportionate share of the command staff at Shoreline, and so I think we'd also be paying a proportion of that too. So I think it'd be more than $50,000 hit to our budget.
Which for city, as you all know, is significant. The other thing was when Peter and I were in Swan Creek Park on Monday, we met a few people and 3 dogs, really nice dogs. People were nice too. But one of the things that we got was they wanted to make Swan Creek Park more wheelchair accessible. And it really wouldn't be that difficult to do. There's a ramp down at the break of the fence, which they can get through. The rock just needs to be compacted down. And it goes off to your left, and we need to bring it around and back to the right. So there's at least a little place that wheelchair people can go where to make it a little bit more accessible. I don't think we do that good a job, but they were very, very serious. And they said, leave it alone. Don't mess with it.
No ballparks.
They don't want no baseball. They don't want just, it's a nice place. People get out and walk and run our dogs. And please, leave it alone. So, I think that about summarizes everything. Yeah, and if there's nothing else to say from the Board of Council, we are adjourned.
I think we had copies of the book.